The movie The Fantastic Four is probably the project I've been looking forward to the most in the entire multiverse saga. Announced as the biggest project during Investor Day in 2020. Right in the middle of the COVID slump. It already seemed like a risky promise, the promise to revive a cursed team. In the movies, a film that clearly could have failed at everything, starting with its director. We went from John Watts and his teenage, light and fun vision to Matt Shakman, an inspired, sensitive and humane creative who brings real soul to the project. And what about the cast? After months of rumors, craziness and struggles, we end up with the most perfect cast in years for a Marvel movie. Their chemistry, their role in this fantastic family that I love with all my heart, their spot-on performances, it's just amazing. But what struck me the most was the universe. Imagine an Earth outside the main Marvel Cinematic Universe, a team of superheroes set in the 1960s and as their opponent, Galactus. Everything about this pitch, straight out of an old comic, was scary. It could have easily become kitschy, sounded fake, or been too far-fetched, and yet it wasn't. Shakman turned it into a wild, epic, lyrical adventure, but above all, an incredibly human one. Personally, I literally fell in love with this family. The mother, Johnny's complex, Ben's warmth, and Reed's cool charisma. That's why I wanted to start this video with a love letter. Thank you, Marvel. Thank you for succeeding at something you couldn't afford to miss, because for me, this film had to be a turning point. You haven't exactly shined in recent years, it has to be said. In fact, I've made dozens of Adanis about your projects. Not great, and every time I told you, don't mess up the Fantastic Four. And Kevin Feige didn't lie to us. This film, the first project of the new Bob Iger era, where the priority has shifted back to quality and not quantity, marks for me the return of an entirely new Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I mean that both figuratively and literally, yes. The Fantastic Four marks the beginning of Phase 6, but also the start of tomorrow's Marvel Cinematic Universe, a new beginning, a soft reboot. Because the Marvel Cinematic Universe we knew in its glory and struggles basically ended with the Thunderbolts. But don't worry, if you're a bit lost by all this, you're in the right place. Because together, we're going to analyze what this year has to offer, its references, its Easter eggs, everything you might have missed. We'll focus on understanding what the post-credits scene means, where it's heading, and how the Fantastic Four will develop in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So obviously we're going to talk about the movie that just came out, so we're entering the spoiler zone, the danger zone. You're with Kevin Bukat, the favorite theorist of a young Kevin who started dreaming again. Opening credits, subtitles by Jeremy Diaz. A new universe, as I was saying. It's been a long time since I felt such a sense of renewal at Marvel. Yes, Phase 6, just like Phase 3 in its time, will have the role of concluding the saga. So by nature, it's more intense, but the Fantastic Four First Step seems much more like a beginning than an end. And I'm not just talking about the start of the phase, because in the end, the phases are mostly just a way to organize the movies a little less chaotically. I'm talking about the beginning of a whole new Marvel universe. And you may have noticed it since the start of this video. I'm deliberately avoiding using the word Marvel Cinematic Universe because 2025 could very well mark a renewal, not just for District of Columbia and its James Gunn version of the District of Columbia universe, but also for Marvel. This week, Kevin Feige surprised everyone with a series of totally unexpected interviews. In major American entertainment outlets, he confirmed most rumors circulating for months. We'll analyze all of that in detail in another video, but for now, let's focus on some key information. First, he confirms that Avengers Secret Wars will lead to a reset. He refuses to use the word reboot, which he considers too scary, too often misunderstood, but here, let's be honest, we're talking about a soft reboot, and he's not the only one. The Russo brothers, directing the next two Avengers movies, are taking the same approach. For them too, Doomsday and Secret Wars won't be a conclusion, but a new beginning. You know, if you follow this channel, Secret Wars will lead to the creation of a new universe. A universe in which everything we've seen between 2008 and 2025 will be part of a forgotten past. Characters and where everything will start over from scratch or almost as soon as 2027. We'll talk more about it in detail next week. But basically, some recently introduced characters will continue their story without taking into account what they experienced in the old Marvel Cinematic Universe. Others will be recast, Iron Man, Captain America, Black Panther, to offer a completely new universe, and then others who will most likely finally disappear. Some characters might keep memories of their past because they will have gone through secret wars as protagonists and will become, in their own way, the guardians of that memory. And that's most likely what awaits our Fantastic Four, because even though the Russo brothers consider Doomsday as the tipping point, everything shows us that the true beginning of this new Marvel Cinematic Universe, well, it's them, the Fantastic Four. And yet, the movie doesn't present itself as a classic origin story, brilliantly introducing us to a new team, their powers, and how they became heroes. All of this happens in the very first minutes of the movie. And definitely, July seems to be the month of unique origin stories, because here, it's hard not to draw a parallel with Superman. The two movies have striking similarities. They take place in a universe that is already well established, with heroes who have been active for several years, but who are now facing their first major challenge. Except that, while Superman embraces an imbalance in tone, narration, and even pacing, the Fantastic Four manage to overcome all these difficulties brilliantly. The film could have failed at everything, but in the end, it succeeds at almost everything, starting with its introduction. We see the family accomplishing their first feats against Mole Man and Giganto, their first enemy, but also facing Red Ghost's apes. A character who, by the way, was simply cut from the final edit, like many other scenes. To give us this fast-paced rhythm, everyone uses their powers and skills. We also spot a cameo from the original Fantastic Four in the unreleased 90s movie. By the way, there's another interesting Easter egg in the film. This shot, with the two comic book artists who go to the window to see the arrival of the surfer. It's actually a depiction of Jack Kirby and probably Stan Lee, the two Marvel legends who created the Fantastic Four. And you can also spot the Timely Comics logo on the wall, Marvel's predecessor, and we can thank Deviant for that one. But what better idea as an introduction than this tribute television show that broadcasts archival footage and, in this case, works infinitely better. Flat Superman intro. Yes, this intro is perfect. Then, the movie takes the time to properly introduce each character. It allows us to get attached to them, and soon the plot begins and keeps us engaged until the end. Yes, the team almost fails throughout the whole movie, but they stay united and always end up surpassing their limits. Like Superman, the Fantastic Four managed the feat of reinventing the origin story, a format we thought was worn out, but where the movie goes further than Superman is with the antagonist. Because Galactus is not just a simple mirror enemy. He doesn't just oppose his strength to theirs. He comes to challenge what the family represents. He wants the Richards to sacrifice their son to save Earth, putting everything at risk. But the family's strength is their refusal to compromise. They'll find a way to save both. Now let's return to the idea of a new universe. We know Reed Richards and his family will be central in the upcoming Avengers, and a second movie is already in development. They will be the new faces of Marvel's future alongside the X-Men. But there's something that really struck me in this movie, just like Superman. It works almost entirely as a standalone film, and that makes sense. It takes place in another universe, by definition, not connected to what happened before in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But that's probably also what makes it so accessible. That being said, it's actually a bit more useful than that, because Deadpool and Wolverine also take place in another universe. And yet, the very essence of their plot relies on the Time Variance Authority and on the old Fox movies. Here, in the Fantastic Four, there isn't a single gratuitous cameo, no fanservice just thrown in for hype, and above all, the multiverse is barely even mentioned. It was the perfect chance to introduce it before Doomsday, but nothing happened. And I'll tell you, even if it might seem frustrating at first glance, it's neither a mistake nor an oversight. On the contrary, it's extremely clever. No more homework these past few months. By reading interviews with James Gunn and Kevin Feige, heads of District of Columbia Studios and Marvel, you quickly grasp their views on superhero fatigue. And it's based on two observations. First, a real drop in quality in superhero productions. A drop linked to a lot of situational issues in recent years, but especially to the fever of overproduction that followed the success of Infinity War and Endgame, but also because of COVID. But above all, a fatigue linked to that famous obligation of having to do your homework. And to illustrate this, just look at the other releases of the year. Let's take Thunderbolt, for example. The film was generally praised by critics and appreciated by fans. Objectively, it's a very good movie, but it didn't achieve the expected success. Why? Because 95% of the characters come from projects that most of the audience hasn't seen, so the movie relies entirely on your dedication during the worst years of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. If you're not up to date, you end up lost in a story with no connection. Unfortunately, not everyone watches my guide videos to understand it all, but you do. If you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Subscribe now. Same problem for Captain America, Brave New World, between the development of Bucky and Sam on Disney Plus and a plot taken from The Incredible Hulk, which came out 17 years ago. It's hard to convince a father to take his son to see that. So yes, for us hardcore fans, it's great to have this continuity because we're mega geeks, but for the general public, it's too complicated. And by the way, where is he, the real captain? Anyway, Kevin Feige and Bob Iger understood all that very well. The new Marvel Cinematic Universe will have to be less interdependent, but still just as interconnected. Let's take the Fantastic Four as an example. The movie is designed as a new entry point. No need to rewatch the 306 hours of the Marvel Cinematic Universe to enjoy it. Everything is there, straightforward, clear, without overload. And even I, who loves to theorize and analyze everything, have to admit it feels good. Earth 828 hasn't taken on the history of the Avengers, the Sorcerers, the Eternals, or the Gods. And above all, no multiverse, even though it was really the perfect time to talk about it right before Doomsday. But Feige chose to isolate it, like really. Even if it's frustrating, as we said, it's clever. Everything we find here is new. The Fantastic Four are incredibly powerful. They master space travel, wormholes, teleportation, and the post-credit scene. It introduces us to tomorrow's threat, Doctor Doom, a character still unknown in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it does so without making a big deal out of it. The movie really acts as the first chapter of a new universe. And since it doesn't explain the multiverse, you don't even need to watch it to understand the next Doomsday. It doesn't tease anything, it just tells its story. As a result, the audience won't have any homework to do before going to see the next Avengers. And that's exactly what Infinity War managed to do. Thanos had been teased, sure, for a long time, and the Stones too. But in 10 seconds, Wong and Banner explain everything to you and boom, everyone can follow along. By the way, a lot of people discovered the Marvel Cinematic Universe at that moment, and it created a huge hype among everyone. And for me, Doomsday should be able to be seen in the same way, as a gateway. But then, how do you keep global interconnectivity without forcing people to have seen everything? How do you avoid making that mistake again? Here too, Biggie has the answer. The post-Endgame characters will definitely come back, but not all of them will have their own movies or series. He gives James Gunn as an example. In Superman, we discover the Justice Gang without knowing anything about them, and it works perfectly. And he concludes with this sentence. That's the beauty of comics. You never know which hero might show up. And I love that, because it takes us out of two extremes. Movies that ignore everything else, like a Red Hulk attacking Washington and no other hero shows up. Or on the other hand, movies packed with pointless cameos just to say hi. And we already have the feeling that the new District of Columbia Marvel rivalry is already starting to have an effect. What if Marvel superhero movies finally became like the comics? Not just one hero, but a whole universe living together in service of the story. Not just to tease, not just to sell a post-credit scene, but to move the characters and the overall plot forward in the film. That would be a real break from the disappointing strategy of recent years. You know, just promising without delivering anything in the end. And finally, my little plea about how the Fantastic Four marks a real renewal, I want to point out one last detail, the opening credits. In recent years, the legendary Marvel Studios logo has been used in all sorts of ways, but it was still the Marvel Cinematic Universe's opening credits. And here, it's not just a simple Marvel Studios logo in the colors of the Fantastic Four. For me, it's a clear signal, a break, a symbol of renewal, the entry point for a new generation of fans. At least, that's how I interpret it. The first Marvel family, as I was saying, Matt Jackman is probably the director this film needed. Creative, bold, but above all passionate, he managed to give this family all the love it deserves, and honestly, it really shows. Because the Fantastic Four, just like Superman, is a true comic book movie, the universe is truly fantastic in every sense of the word. With actions that can sometimes seem wacky, almost cartoonish, but at the same time, the film really goes all in. There are scenes that can visually rival Interstellar. It's a film clearly divided into several distinct acts. First, the origin story, then the galactic act with the confrontation against Galactus and his surfer, and finally, the scientific act, where Reed is overwhelmed by the events, until he finds the solution thanks to Sue's brilliant speech. And finally, the final superhero showdown as a family, which obviously reminds us of the Incredibles themselves, who were inspired by the Fantastic Four. The tone is set right from the start. The movie opens with the scene where Sue finds out she's pregnant, and unlike what all parents tell themselves at that moment, yes, it changes everything. A movie that clearly stands out from other superhero films. Because above all, it's a family movie. Not in the marketing sense of the word, but a film about family in its most physical, most intimate aspects. I'm the father of 2 little boys, and this movie touched me right in the heart. From perfectly balanced humor to a plot that never lets go, everything revolves around family love. And that Chapman understood and captured perfectly. By the way, he dedicates this movie to his young daughter in the credits, and honestly, you can feel it. Yes, you can really say this is the first real Marvel family. Most of the other heroes are individual figures. Sure, they fight for their people, for their loved ones, but above all, they follow their own destiny. Here, heroism is approached from a deeply family-oriented angle, maybe even more mature, more human, and in this family, everyone finds their place. Sue is clearly the soul of the group. She's the one who guides, who makes the tough decisions. She sees right through others and knows how to bring out the best in everyone, even when Reed is cold and pragmatic. She's the one who finds the courage to face the truth and brings the whole family with her. She's the embodiment of the strong and indispensable mother. Johnny, her little brother, is also a real surprise. In previous versions, the Human Torch was mostly there to crack jokes. Here, he's calmer, more thoughtful, while still being that cool uncle we all dreamed of having. He embodies the team's courage, ready to sacrifice himself for his loved ones. But he's not just the funny guy or the team's fool. This film completely avoids that trap. He's even the one who manages to decipher the surfer's language thanks to his Rosetta Stone, a subtle reference to the stele discovered in 1799 by Napoleon, which made it possible to translate Egyptian hieroglyphs. Reed, of course, is the brains. He invents, he analyzes, he thinks for the group, he tries to take care of everyone, and his family also looks out for him. Because despite his genius, Reed remains completely unfit for real life. It's worth mentioning that he can't cook or drive, and actually, well, he's probably my little favorite. I've seen some people say that the Thing was a background character in the movie, but for me, he's the heart of the family. He cooks, he reads books about parenting, he reassures the others, he encourages them to move forward. Even with Herbie, he makes sure not to offend him. He's the glue of the group. By the way, we also find out that Natasha Lyonne doesn't play Alicia Masters, as I had predicted, but a brand new character, Rachel Roseman, a realist from a Jewish community. And this time, she's not blind like Alicia in the comics, but she brings out all of Ben's love. It's a character created for the movie, and I sincerely hope that in the second installment, she will be more central to the story. We'll develop this relationship because we need more Ben Grimm, especially since we learn a bit more about his powers. Yes, he's solid, tough, powerful, but also almost immortal. We see him pulling a cruise ship out of the bay, underwater, and given his weight, it's clear he doesn't swim. And when Galactus throws him into the stratosphere until he freezes, he survives. In the comics, it's the same. Ben hardly ages, he can survive anything. And while Johnny Reed's powers are well used in the movie, we need to talk about Sue. I already mentioned this in the previous video. Sue Storm is considered the most powerful member of the Fantastic Four, and the movie confirms this just like in the comics. She trapped Hulk in a force field, showing that they are impermeable even to great powers. She pierced the armor of a Celestial, who is considered a god, and during Civil War, she refused the pilots. Reed switches sides and stops Thor's hammer, thrown at full power, not to mention the time when she deactivated Iron Man's armor by creating a force field inside the suit. In short, very few things can stop Susie, and apparently not even Galactus. By the way, let's talk about it. A perfect Galactus. Unlike most superhero movies, the Fantastic Four don't spend half the movie fighting each other, right? Here, they learn about the arrival of a cosmic natural disaster that threatens to engulf the Earth, and they try to fix it by finding a scientific solution. That's why the movie flirts so much with science fiction, but above all, Galactus is really well represented here. We quickly understand who he is, where he comes from, and what he wants. And honestly, it's almost hard to analyze because everything is there. They succeeded, in my opinion. A perfect Galactus. But there might be one thing you don't know. What are his actual powers? Galactus is an entity from the previous iteration of our universe. Yes, the universe operates in cycles of several billion years, and with each Big Bang, new laws and new entities appear. I'm not going to recap the Marvel Cinematic Universe's whole cosmic history, but you get the idea. Galactus was once a humanoid named Galan of Ta, after his home planet, the most technologically and scientifically advanced planet of his former universe. Just before the Big Bang, and his ship, the THA-2, obviously gets its name from there, at the end of that ancient universe, Galen is the only survivor. He merges with what is called the cosmic egg, which gives birth to Galactus, and that's where it gets fascinating. Galactus is neither good nor evil, he is a regulator, he acts in service of cosmic balance and prevents the overpopulation of civilizations. By maintaining the natural order of the universe, he consumes planets using a machine, the planetary converter, the one we see in the movie. In his ship, a machine that absorbs the life energy of a planet and transforms it into cosmic force, his fuel. And that's it, his only weakness, his insatiable appetite. He needs energy because otherwise he gets weakened. Yet, his powers are godlike. He can manipulate energy and matter, create, destroy, shape almost anything. And he's almost omnipotent, but without fuel, he gets exhausted, so he never stops consuming planets. And for that, he needs emissaries, heroes, not heroes like superheroes, but chosen beings, capable of withstanding a transfer of cosmic powers. Beings who are physically or mentally powerful, often desperate like Shalabal in the movie, who wants to save her own planet. Or sometimes, beings attracted by power, who literally become demigods under the yoke of Galactus. By the way, in the movie, Johnny offers to become his new hero to save his nephew and to save his planet. This is an event that has already happened in the comics. At that moment, he switched his powers with those below, and so he has the ability of invisibility. He is then captured by Galactus and becomes his emissary, tasked with tracking down the planets that try to hide from him. But the most well-known of these heroes is obviously the Silver Surfer, who is replaced here by the Surfer Girl in the comics. Norrin Radd shares the same origin as Shalabal in the movie. He also comes from the planet Zenla, a utopian, peaceful world, almost immortal, with an incredible level of technology. But most importantly, he is Shalabal's lover. When Galactus arrives, he begs him to spare his planet and offers to become his herald, the one who will find planets for him to devour. Galactus accepts. He transforms him, makes him amnesiac, and removes all empathy and emotion from him. He then becomes a cold, relentless, tragic, and extremely efficient servant. But one day, he regains his memories and tries to reunite with Shalabal, but Galactus has cursed him. Their reunion is impossible. He will live broken, sacrificing everything for the woman he loves and for his world. But let me remind you, here we are in an alternate universe, and an alternate universe means alternate choices. For example, National Aeronautics and Space Administration is renamed ANSA. In the movie, here, Norrin Radd is replaced by Shalabal in the role of the hero. This very likely paves the way for the Silver Surfer in the next soft reboot of the Marvel Cinematic Universe since it has been announced. By the way, we can say that this Silver Surfer is simply extraordinary. Whether it's the actress or the special effects, which are stunning, the movie then takes a galactic turn that we've never seen before in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Captain Marvel and the Guardians of the Galaxy have already taken us into space, but here we're exploring galactic science fiction in its purest form. The Fantastic Four don't use the usual jump points, right? They use a wormhole technology that allows them to travel faster than light. And let's be honest, it's absolutely magnificent. Even better, they use a black hole to launch themselves, harnessing its gravity to get the necessary pull and to get back home. At that moment, I stopped feeling like I was watching a Marvel movie. Everything sounded right and felt believable, almost realistic, which usually isn't the case with Marvel in space. And honestly, it's the best sequence in the movie, maybe even in the whole multiverse saga. The shots are stunning and the chase is epic. And once again, it marks a complete break from the old Marvel Cinematic Universe, especially when you know that the galactic aspect is going to become central in Marvel's future. We really have to hope Matt Shakman stays with Marvel for a long time, just like Jack Schreier or Destin Daniel Cretton. Because right now, when it comes to talented directors, we're really spoiled, and that hasn't always been the case. A curious detail, by the way, is that we see a flag of the Future Foundation on the moon. So, was that the goal of their first mission? Did the cosmic storm catch them on their way back from that mission? Maybe. I still had the impression that they never went back to space after that mission. Anyway, Galactus wants the child. He senses that the end of the multiverse is near, and he sees Franklin as his successor. Franklin, as seen in the movie. Franklin is the son of Sue and Reed, two characters who were exposed to cosmic radiation, which makes Franklin literally infused with cosmic powers. An Omega-level mutant, which is the highest power level among mutants, and this officially makes him the third mutant in the Marvel Cinematic Universe after Namor and Kamala Khan. Yes, I'm not counting the X-Men, nor those in Deadpool and Wolverine because I do what I want. But Franklin is much more than just a mutant in the comics. He is considered a born god, a human. As he grows up, Franklin gains total mastery over reality, an unmatched cosmic power, since he can reshape the universe at will. Creating pocket universes, building cabins, time travel, energy control, or reviving anything he wants. To give you an idea, in the comics, he's the one who brings Galactus back to life and makes him his own hero, almost like his pet. So yeah, he's literally a mutant god. That's likely why he's the most important character for the Marvel Cinematic Universe's future. Since he's our bridge between the mutants, the Fantastic Four, and the multiverse, yes, because he's also the one who will recreate the multiverse at the end of Secret Wars. If you've seen my videos on Marvel's mishandling of powerful characters, you know there's a good chance they won't know what to do with him. But rest assured, this problem isn't unique to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. In the comics, it's hard to know what to do with a godchild among the heroes. And that's why, even today, in the comics, Franklin is still a child with unstable powers. He uses them like a child. Sometimes to save his family, sometimes to save the universe, sometimes just to play with his sister. But to make him really interesting, Marvel found a solution. They brought his future self as a mentor, to teach him what kind of primordial god he is supposed to become in a distant future. And that's actually where we find him in History of the Marvel Universe by Mark Waid. At the very end of the existence of our universe, he asked Galactus one last time to tell him the story of his universe, before taking over as the devourer of worlds in the next iteration of the universe. Yes, so he is Galactus's heir in the comics, but in the Fantastic Four movie, he's still just a baby with cosmic power. The ending explained as Franklin is captured by Galactus. Sue uses all her power to push him back and succumbs to this feat. But baby Franklin is there and he brings her back to life thanks to his cosmic powers. And clearly you can tell this scene was added at the last minute already, because several reports had confirmed that the ending of the movie was discussed at length and that it was completely changed just a few months ago. But above all, the special effects in this scene are really ugly, while the rest of the movie is visually flawless. Yes, the integration of the baby and its animation in this final sequence, honestly, it's awful. And if this moment was added at the last second, it's definitely not for nothing, we know that. The first post-credit scene was filmed by the Russo brothers recently on the set of Avengers Doomsday. You saw it just like I did. It takes place 4 years after the events of the movie. Suzanne shares a moment with her son Franklin, who has grown up a lot, by reading to him. The first book is a story about a caterpillar that becomes a butterfly, and the second one is suggested by Orby. It's The Origin of Species, Darwin's book, where he develops his theory of evolution. But Sue ultimately chooses another children's book, a book that exists in real life. A Fly Went By. It's a story where a little boy discovers that several animals are chasing each other, each one running away from the one behind, who is also running away from the one behind him. Do you get it? The kid goes back up the whole chain and realizes that it all started from a simple, harmless noise that triggered a general panic. A book that basically tells us that knowledge can help control fear. And then the scene continues with the appearance of the man everyone was waiting for. Sue comes back with the book and we hear a dull thud. An apparition is about to attack, but finds the child facing a man, his hand placed on the child's face. This is Victor Von Doom, or Fatali 100 in the French version, and the child seems intrigued, probably because of his scars, his facial deformities. And this scene, even though it seems minimalistic, could actually say much more than we think. We know the Russo brothers love details. And already, we can say that the books were clearly not chosen at random. The first one, with the caterpillar and the butterfly, symbolizes Doom's evolution to me. We see that today, he wears a mask to hide his face, and Franklin doesn't react at all. Yet, if he's like in the comics, his face is usually monstrous. And we know that Doom will soon evolve into God Emperor Doom, literally from caterpillar to butterfly. The second book, The Origin of Species, of course talks about biological evolution, and Franklin is the perfect example of it. He is the very first mutant of his universe, the next step in human evolution in the Marvel comics. But the most interesting thing is the last one, that harmless noise that triggers a chain reaction, a widespread panic. For me, that's exactly the role Doom will play in Avengers 5, that of a shadowy manipulator who will sow chaos to push the X-Men, the Avengers, and the Fantastic Four to fight each other. A chaos that will obviously benefit him since he possesses the knowledge about the end of the multiverse. And above all, this scene suggests that the family knows him. Sue, who was about to attack him, changes her mind. Franklin, on the other hand, isn't afraid for a single second, which makes sense. Everything in the movie suggests that Victor Von Doom already exists in this universe. He's just absent at the beginning of the film during Suzanne's conference. Then, when all the countries are called to take part in the global effort, Latveria is represented, but no one is sitting there, and that makes sense. The Fantastic Four in this movie seem to have the same origin story as in the comics. Ben and Reed supposedly met at Empire State University, and in the comics, that's also where they meet Victor. So, there's a good chance that Victor was part of their circle, that he even contributed to their spaceship project, which would fit perfectly with Mr. Fantastic's age. And Doom's age as well, who is played, let me remind you, by Robert Downey Jr., a Doom with the face of our Tony Stark. Well, originally, because now that face is scarred, damaged, but who knows, maybe it will be temporarily healed by Franklin and his cosmic powers. His disappearance could actually be linked to the attempt to save the multiverse, and that sound we hear when he arrives might simply be the device that allows him to travel between dimensions. How can we connect this post-credit scene to the one with the Thunderbolts, which actually takes place years later? Because yes, you noticed it, the ship is not the same. It has 4 legs instead of 3. Well, simply because it's probably an upgraded version of the first ship. In the movie, Excelsior is damaged when passing close to the black hole, and there's a detail some may have missed. Even though he only made a round trip to negotiate with Galactus, a whole month passed on Earth. Strange, right? Well, actually no, not really. This is real science, actual quantum physics. And you don't need to be an expert in general relativity to understand. Have you seen Interstellar? We discover that time doesn't pass the same way everywhere. Depending on where you are in the universe, depending on the gravity around you, the stronger the gravity, the slower time moves. And a black hole is literally a gravity well that bends space-time. So their few minutes over there turned into a month on Earth. You're still here, perfect. Doom probably found a way to travel alone through the multiverse. You'll see in time, just like in the comics. But he needs his former allies to carry out his plan. And above all, he needs Franklin. I told you, that resurrection scene wasn't added by accident. Doom is going to need his powers, so he's going to convince Reed to join him to save the multiverse. Maybe by causing an incursion between his universe and the X-Men's, or the 616. And together, they're going to build this new ship, just like in the good old days. Except this time, it'll be able to travel not just in the 3D universe, but in the 4D multiverse. Maybe that's where the 4th leg comes from. And while Kang went through the quantum realm into the infinitely small, they'll probably go through a black hole through an interdimensional passage, which could explain why he ends up more than 50 years in the future in the Marvel Cinematic Universe world. And that's exactly why the movie focuses on what's essential. It introduces the team, but connects very little to the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which means that potentially every clue left in the movie is super important. For example, that famous month that passed, the black hole, or that resurrection scene. Franklin's very specific power, a power that, in my opinion, could be used to bring Wanda in. A key character for Matt Shakman, the director who had already directed WandaVision and who said that no, Wanda hasn't disappeared. Speaking of Kang, we can't not mention the Time Variance Authority. Obviously, everything in Reed's technology aesthetic reminds you of the Time Variance Authority, whether it's the screens, the control panels, but also the structure of the city or the vehicles. Yes, the world of the Fantastic Four constantly reminds us of the Time Variance Authority, so maybe it's just a simple retrofuturistic coincidence inspired by the 1960s. But come on, you can't help but think that Reed or Doom might have something to do with it, but there's also that famous bridge. You know, that experimental teleportation technology, it has exactly the same name as Reed's technology in the comics, which allows him to travel through time, dimensions, and the multiverse, especially to find the Council of Reeds. And here, why not the Time Variance Authority? And again, that name was clearly not chosen by accident. He could have called it anything, but they chose that name. And finally, we shouldn't forget the second post-credits scene, which is just as important. We see a cartoon inspired by the Fantastic Four cartoon from the 70s, except here, it's integrated into the movie universe, since Herbie comes to turn off the television. And it seems that this official cartoon is inspired by the real adventures of the Fantastic Four. We see the last 4 characters mentioned by Reed when he announces that he dismantled the 42 criminal organizations in one night. There's the Mole Man, the Wizard, the Puppet Master, and Diablo. The Red Ghost, originally played by John Malkovich but cut from the final edit, appears briefly through one of his monkeys. But also the man, dragon, and especially that robot, a Guardian. One of the very first series of robots created by Doom to protect Latveria, long before the famous Doombots, yet another proof that Doom really does exist in this universe. By the way, in this cartoon there's another detail behind Reed. There's a moment where you can see the number 42, like the 42 gangs he dismantled. And it's no coincidence that this number comes up twice when talking about his antagonists. It's a direct reference to Prison 42. A high-security prison in the negative zone built by Reed during Civil War to lock up unregistered heroes, and that could very well be a clue for what's coming next. In short, these scenes say much more than they seem. They literally give us the keys to Doom's future plans and confirmation that he comes from the same universe as the Fantastic Four, the future of the Fantastic Four. Marvel's first family is finally introduced into the Marvel Cinematic Universe multiverse. They'll be able to join the party as soon as Avengers Doomsday, probably with a little surprise in tow, Doctor Doom. Reports say Reed Richards will co-lead the next 2 Avengers movies with Thor and Sam, starting with this film. Here, the goal isn't to predict Doomsday and Secret Wars, but to discuss what comes after. Because if there's one thing we can be pretty sure of, it's that the Fantastic Four are here to stay. They should fit into this new universe, most likely recreated by Franklin's powers. A world where everyone belongs, as if they were always there, built on the foundations of previous universes. So, with the Baxter Building and the Fantastic Four continuing their adventures as if nothing had happened, but then, will we ever see Galactus again? Because in this movie, he wasn't defeated. He was just sent to the other end of the cosmos with the Surfer without a ship. And that raises a question, is there only one Galactus in the multiverse, or does each universe have its own Galactus? Yes, I know you're asking that question, but Marvel doesn't plan to answer it, simply because they don't need to. Because, as I just said, the multiverse is going to be rebooted. So yes, a Galactus will indeed exist in this new universe. And no, everything that happened in that old world won't really matter anymore. However, earlier I was talking to you about Prison 42. It's located in a place called the Negative Zone, a parallel dimension ruled by a certain Annihilus and his horde of alien insectoid destructive creatures, and guess what? All the insiders agree on one thing. One of the major arcs after Secret Wars will be galactic, with Annihilus as the central threat. So, there's a good chance that the second Fantastic Four movie will come out shortly after Secret Wars, possibly in 2028, and that it will kick off this arc with a huge wrinkle bomb. As usual, we can also expect the arrival of Valeria, Franklin's little sister, who shares her dad's intellect, and there's a pretty clear hint. The actors from the Fantastic Four have already filmed more than half of their scenes in Doomsday only. We saw it during the tour. Vanessa Kirby is a few months pregnant. In real life, I mean. So, will Marvel use this pregnancy to move her into the background and give her a second child in the next Avengers? That's a good question, since Reed will lead a team against the X-Men and likely defend Loki from Doom afterward. We also saw a behind-the-scenes photo of Ben in his ship, surrounded by United States Agent and Falcon, characters meant to stay on Earth to defend it. All this suggests that Reed will be the focal point of the next Avengers, but that he will be separated from his family, and that fits perfectly with the Secret Wars comic. In this version, the other team members are completely reassigned by God. Emperor Doom. Ben becomes a warlike in Game of Thrones to prevent a zombie invasion of Battleworld, and Johnny serves as his son. And under the children, they literally become Doom's wife and children, just like that. Well, I hope you enjoyed this long format. Analysis of the Fantastic Four movie. If that's the case, feel free to give a little boost. It helps the video get promoted and rewards the team's crazy hard work. As you understood, I love this movie. I'm so happy and feel so lucky to have felt that again in a movie theater. Guys, it really looks like Marvel is on the right track, that Marvel is back, yes. So, if you haven't seen my latest videos, they're right here, and we'll see each other next week for a new show, Exploration. In the meantime, don't forget to be curious, that's the secret to being happy.